Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Blitz. I'm Gary Drapshow. It was a very memorable night in Waterford last week when one of their legendary coaches was honored with a special dedication. In front of hundreds at the middle school gymnasium, the Fort LaBeouf wrestling program dedicated their new practice and all-purpose room to one of the greats and Hall of Fame coaches, Art Stevens. Here was his reaction.
This is better than pretty nice. And the results of an awful lot of people in getting this accomplished just makes the entire community better, let alone the wrestling program. Because it's used, the room itself is used by a lot of people. Many of them involve the wrestling program, but it's used for other purposes as well. It's very nice.
Steves was a coach with many programs, but spending 25 seasons as the head wrestling coach at Fort LaBeouf. And we are pleased to have the one and the only Art Steves joining us here on the Sunday Sports Blitz. Art, first of all, congratulations on the dedication at Fort LaBeouf. It's a big honor, to say the least. The community down there has always been supportive of the wrestling program and continues to be. What's your reaction to everything that went on down there last week, and knowing that your name will be there for decades and centuries to come?
I'll begin with, Gary, thank you very much for this invitation. And the answer is very simple. It was an extremely high honor to have this room named for me, but the facility is a drastic improvement over what existed in the past, and there's going to be a number of young people that are going to avail themselves of this facility, and hopefully their talents will improve because of its existence. And I'm just grateful to all the people that were a part of planning, preparation, and funding of this facility, because it's a rather sizable commitment.
And as I mentioned, the community has always been supportive of wrestling in Waterford and at Fort LaBeouf. Why is that, Art? Why are they so dedicated to that sport in particular?
I don't know what my role was, but I know this. I learned a simple philosophy a number of years ago. If I can come up with a correct idea, people can't wait to get their wallet out to be supportive. And so therefore, if I can come up with a good idea, they'll be glad to support it, because it's their children that are involved. They want to have the best facilities available at the time for them, and they'll just simply shell out the money to allow this to occur. That was true back in the days when I first started coaching, and it's true today.
And that is proof of that. Let's talk a little bit about yourself. A Hall of Fame coach, and we were saying after how many Hall of Fames this guy is in. Obviously the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame, the Fort LaBeouf Hall of Fame, the State Wrestling Hall of Fame, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, and any other Hall of Fame out there that has to do with wrestling, right?
One more, the Union City Wall of Achievement.
Oh, nice.
I was a member of the 1954 graduating class, and I'm not too sure why they chose me to be honored, but I'm grateful that they did.
You'll take it, won't you? No question about that. Who influenced you the most as a coach? Was there someone when you were growing up and being in the sport, wrestling in the sport, and beginning to think about your career to be a wrestling coach? Who influenced you the most in that regard?
Thank you for asking. First of all, my record is perfect. You know, I never lost a match. Mm-hmm. Also never won one either. The high school in which I graduated, Union City, started wrestling a year after I graduated. Slippery Rock as a college started wrestling the year after I graduated. So therefore, all my lessons and experiences came through the School of Hard Knocks. I had 1 year as an assistant coach under Rich DeLuca, and needless to say, that was a learning experience. At the end of that year, he retired as a head coach. They offered the job to me, and I took it. Our first year, we were 4-10, which would, in dual matches, which would lead you to believe they ought to get the axe out and fire me. But they stuck with me, and for the next 4 years, we took the Erie County Championship and just continued to have good programs almost every year after that.
And so what was the secret? What turned that around, and what did you learn from maybe that 1 year as an assistant that turned around a 4-10 team to win the 4 consecutive Erie County championships?
Well, you have to ask my wrestlers as to what I did that impressed them. I'm probably kind of a poor judge. I know this: if someone utilized some particular maneuver against me, priority number one became, I better figure out how to stop that. Mm-hmm. Number two, if it's so darn good, maybe we should copy it. And therefore, the teams in which I coached were not cloned, where everybody used the same maneuver or wrestling hold. We were quite varied with our skill and talent level, and that made us hard to prepare for. There were some things we did very, very well, but there wasn't just one thing you could guarantee that my wrestlers would do. And I was blessed primarily with wrestlers that didn't want to lose and would take the necessary steps in preparation to try to avoid that. And we didn't really badger people too much if they weren't successful. Mm-hmm. We just tried to improve their talent and skill level. And as I said, I was blessed with young wrestlers that wanted to do just exactly that.
I can tell from talking to you here and talking to you many times in the past that people will listen to you. You have a way of expressing yourself in a way that draws their attention. Is that something that you feel as a coach was one of your strong points? Getting the point across and doing it in a way that people are going to listen and say, you know, what he said is a pretty good thing.
Well, you're now touching a subject that's very dear to my heart. To young people, I tell them, the English language is our method of expressing ourselves. You've got two choices: speak it or write it. And if you're proficient at either one of those levels, I'll bet you there'll be a place for you for the next 40 years in which you'll earn enough money to pay your bills. And I enjoyed speaking. I'm nowhere near as proficient or competent with a pen, but I enjoyed speaking. I've never really felt uncomfortable in any situation. And if somebody wants to listen to me, congratulations, because I'm also familiar with the sound of one hand clapping, and so I'm grateful in these honors that have been bestowed upon me in the last few weeks. When I was introduced, no one got up and left the room, so I appreciate
to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I mean that is something not to be underestimated. Is the way a coach communicates to his or her players and administrators and fans and whatever the case may be. Just a little bit more in terms of the Fort LaBeouf and the wrestling, and we were talking a little bit about team and individual and how different that is and how Fort LaBeouf has succeeded from the team aspect. Individuals can come and go in terms of state championship. You might see a state champion at this school, at this school, at this school. But in terms of teams, Fort LaBeouf has always had great teams down there, and they pass that tradition on, whether it is from brother to brother or brother to cousin or whatever the case may be.
That is the point. At one time I made this study. I had 68 families that sent me brother combinations. The largest number was the Janoski family with 6. The Pace family sent me 5. And I had the distinction of whereby the last one of the bunch was never the worst one. And they were a little hard on the furniture in the living room, but they passed it on from one level to the next, and it was a goal for each one coming up to be a little bit better than the last. In fact, the family pressure almost demanded it.
Wow.
So, and this helped for team strength. I mentioned that individual wrestlers now are better than they were 25 years ago. They're more skilled. They're certainly more successful, or could be, but the team strength is lacking. There are a number of schools right now that will have difficulty filling a 14 weight class team, and the team balance isn't as strong as it used to be. But the individual wrestlers are, if they stick with it, are very good, because there are youth programs and supplementary programs that they can avail themselves of that will just make them a lot better if they're willing to make the commitment.
All right, so we are not done with Art. Art's just step by. I got one more question to ask you, and we'll do that after the break. And that is how you feel wrestling is now as compared to your days. You mentioned about wrestling being better, but what can the schools do, what can the coaches do, the administrators, and everybody involved in the sport do to make the sport of wrestling a better sport than what it is right now? More participants, more winning, more championships, so on and so forth. We delve into the mind of the one and only Hall of Famer Art Steves as the Sports Blitz continues right after this. We are once again back here on the Sunday Sports Blitz with Hall of Fame wrestling coach Art Steves, who recently had the wrestling room dedicated down at Fort LaBeouf Middle School. And I mentioned before the break, Art, one other question for you. You know, in all of your years of experience and the wrestlers that you've had, you know, the ups and downs of the sports, team-wise and individual-wise, what do you feel today could make wrestling a better sport? It's very popular in certain pockets. But what do you think can make wrestling a better sport in terms of this area, especially in the number of participants?
Well, Gary, thank you for asking, and you're a big part of the answer to that question. I've always said that one of the worst things that can happen to a young man or a young woman is do something well and nobody knows about it. So therefore, the coverage, the publicity you and your sports department can give is always appreciated. That motivates them. And at the same time, I used to have wrestlers that would, the day after a match, would get to school a half an hour early in the morning so they'd make their 4 laps around the school and be congratulated for what they did the previous evening. Well, in this case, they were recognized for their skill level and their accomplishments. It made them feel well. It put more pressure on them to continue and to do better than they'd done previously. And it's true with the school, the community, the newspapers, the television, that can recognize these accomplishments and excuse me, and give them credit for the things that they do well. And then let's do it this way. Don't browbeat their failures. These are young high school kids or even below that who are going to make mistakes. For heaven's sakes, don't shoot them at sunrise if all of a sudden they don't meet your standards on a particular evening, because the sun will come up the next morning and they will have the opportunity to get bigger. So it is a community effort, not only with that individual school, but in this case, the entire northwestern Pennsylvania, to include Erie County and Crawford County and Mercer County. Give them credit for what they do and encourage them to do better if they can. And thank you very much. That's a good question, sir.
Art, thank you very much. Hall of Fame coach Art Steves, thanks for coming in. Boy, we could go on and on. I've got to, you want to come back sometime?
Absolutely, and a Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and the entire wrestling family that you are the king of. There's no question about that. The great Art Steves. We'll be back with more of the Sunday Sports Blitz right after this.